historian buffs. Let's pick up your quill and let's have a debate. So I just want to talk to you about a couple of things real quick. It's actually some things that we've been discussing in the classroom recently, and wanted to kind of have this conversation on YouTube. You kind of come in the comments, let me know what you think. Not to get political, we just want to kind of talk about some different things that have been debated for such a long time. So we're learning about the Constitution in the classroom this past week, and so we're going to have some Constitution talks. Remember, let's go back, let's rewind, let's see what's been happening in American history up to this point before we even get the Constitution. Of course, we go through the American Revolution. We are fighting a entrenched, centralized, strong government, and the people over here in America, the colonists, are concerned about this strong, centralized government that we've had, and so we win the American Revolution, and then right after that, after the Paris Peace Treaty, then we set up and start the Articles of Confederation. It comes out of thoughts of previous times with Benjamin Franklin and the Albany Planted Union in 1754, and all of those kinds of things. So that's about where we are. Obviously, our founding fathers, one of the things that they are really concerned about is this strong centralized government. So they set up a government underneath the Articles of Confederation that is a unicameral government with a one-bodied legislature. And so there's no executive, there's no judicial, unicameral meaning one body. So there is a one-bodied government, one-bodied legislative system. There's so many things that the federal government at the time cannot do. The states are really, really concerned about the strong centralized government. If you really take a look at it, the states have a lot of power during the Articles of Confederation, but the federal government has very little power. We go through some growing pains. We've got some issues going on. Shays' Rebellion happens, all this other kind of stuff, and they start to really think about, wait a minute, we've got to strengthen the federal government as a whole. So they kind of break off. They start having some secret meetings, by the way. Some of you know this, the Philadelphia Convention, and they want to go into this meeting talking about changing the Articles. Rhode Island doesn't come to the table. They don't even want to be there. Pretty soon after this meeting happens, as soon as it starts to come into play, several delegates begin to leave. Even one delegate from Georgia leaves because they have realized that this is not a meeting about fixing the Articles of Confederation, but now it has turned into a meeting to get rid of the Articles of Confederation, start over new. So that's what they get into. And then they start to debate. They go through a long process of different debates of how they're going to write this thing, how they're going to do this thing, how are they going to take power from the states and allow for more power in the federal government. Well, that's what happens. That eventually happens. They get the Constitution passed through all kind of legal trickery and political jargon and all this other kind of stuff. They get the Constitution passed. But the debate has been raging ever since, from before that time to this time now. How big should the federal government be? And when do we stop? How strong should the federal government be? And when is enough enough? So that's been the debate ever since. And honestly, if you even look into the news today, we're still arguing the same exact thing. When we're sitting here arguing, and is it, can President-elect Trump get cabinet appointments, recess cabinet appointments, all that kind of stuff. All of that's got to do with the same type of debate. When do we allow for this federal government to be as strong as it is, and when do we stop? That's so again, it's something we constantly are discussing and arguing, wanting to know about. And what I try to teach my students to help you understand, to help them understand all that kind of stuff, is that we, the people of the United States, the voters, consent to that. We're the ones who decide ultimately through our voice and through our voting how much power does the federal government strictly have. All right, so let's rewind once again. Let's go all the way back. Let's look at this original debate that's happening between our founding fathers. So the debate is over on which way the Constitution can be interpreted. Are we going to be strict, or are we going to be loose? Thomas Jefferson is very strict on the wording and the interpretation of the Constitution. Alexander Hamilton, on the other hand, is loose. He thinks that depending on the situation, the Constitution can be interpreted differently. So we're going to talk amongst ourselves of being strict or loose. Again, let's take a look at Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson is very strict in his interpretation of the Constitution. What the Constitution says goes. If it does not explicitly say it in the Constitution, it's not there. It means the federal government shouldn't have that power. It means that the federal government has to relinquish that power to the state, to state control, and allow it for the states to have the power other than the federal government. Okay? He kind of looks the Constitution as like a recipe book if you're baking a cake. If you don't follow the rules explicitly, then you could have a disaster in the end. That's the way that Thomas Jefferson looked at the Constitution. Now, later on in his life, he begins to talk about, he even brings up, a student brought this up to me, that he does talk about that there can be some additions, some adjustments to the Constitution later on. Of course, we know that. Now, when he becomes president himself, we're not even going to get really into it, but he does tend to, let's essentially go against the power that he has, for lack of a better term, an abuse of power, and the fact that he agrees to the purchase of Louisiana, the Louisiana Purchase, which is not within his federal purview, but he does it anyways, and takes that power even though the Constitution doesn't give him that right. So even though he says he is a strict, which he is, he does tend to take the opportunity for himself, and of course we buy Louisiana. Now let's talk about the other side. We have Alexander Hamilton. Alexander Hamilton is a loose constructionist. He believes that he can interpret the Constitution with the words that it has and fix the time for what we're going through, the circumstances. He believed that if the Constitution was too rigid, the country could not and would not grow. We would have issues. One of the reasons he uses this is in Article 2. Article 2 talks about the necessary adjustments for for Congress. What is necessary and proper clause in Article 2. Of course, Thomas Jefferson says that is not what that means, but Alexander Hamilton holds that is the case. That based off of the circumstances and things that are done, even if the Constitution does not explicitly say it for the federal government, then the federal government can use it because it's necessary and proper. He actually goes into this to create the National Bank. Of course, it becomes an argument because guess what? Thomas Jefferson does not believe in the National Bank, or that it's a power, because it is not explicitly mentioned in the Constitution. Of course, they take this debate. It actually goes to George Washington, and George Washington actually sides with his fellow brother in arm, Alexander Hamilton, on this case, and he supports the national banking system. So obviously we can see through history that presidents and even our founding fathers have taken the opportunity to interpret to what they want or whatever's needed for the time. But this is a still raging debate. Okay, and the question to you that I would like to pose to you: are you strict or are you loose? Do you think that the Constitution should be firmly interpreted in its wording? That if it does not explicitly say it, it goes to states and not to the federal government? Or are you under the side of a loose constructionalist, constitutionalist? Do you believe that the Constitution itself can be interpreted and its words based off of the times and the situations that are needed? Again, Alexander Hamilton using the proper and necessary clause of Article 2. So just a question to you: is that what you are? Are you like Alexander Hamilton and loose, or are you like Thomas Jefferson and firm? Now, of course, we do have James Madison. James Madison's more of the middle road. He does believe that through proper channels that the Constitution can be adjusted and changed for the moment through proper channels. I would tend to lean towards more of a Madison type idea. I do firmly believe in the wording of the Constitution that it should not be adjusted for the time or for the situation at hand. But then I also do see that through proper channels that the Constitution can be adjusted and changes be made to the Constitution that fit. Of course, we now have 27 amendments that were not there originally, and that these amendments can be added on at the end through proper channels. So I do believe that that can happen. I believe that that is an okay thing. I am not like Alexander Hamilton, where just beating on the time and the situation that the Congress can do that. Now, just so you know, just to bring you up to speed, of course, we are a part of a federal government that is now a bicameral government with a bicameral legislature. We're no longer unicameral government with a unicameral legislature. So again, now we have bicameral, meaning we have a multi-party federal government, and then we also have a legislature that is multi-bodied as well. So again, we have the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. Inside of the legislative branch, we have an upper house and a lower house known as the Senate and a House of Representatives. That is some things that we've been discussing all week with my students in class. Wanted to bring this up to you guys. Hey, if you like this kind of stuff, I want you to like this video. I also want you to make some comments. I would love to hear your comments about it. My students had to write a paper on what they think. We had all kind of great different discussions going on with the 8th graders on what do they think on this. So now I want to know what you think. Like the video, and also, hey, if you like some history stuff, and again, we'll be talking about beards, go ahead and subscribe to